If I had known that moment, pressed awkwardly into the tiny rear space of a car, seated on my husband's son's lap, would become the unraveling of everything I believed about loyalty, desire, and myself, maybe I would have taken my own car. Then again, maybe not. The California sun dipped low in the sky that evening, casting a molten glow across the cliffs as we cruised along the Pacific Coast Highway. The top was down, the breeze wild, flinging strands of hair across my face. But all I could focus on was the solid presence of Noah beneath me. Yes, his lap. I'm Rachel Thompson. I'm 38. I've been married for 12 years to a man who used to look at me like I was the only thing that mattered. Ethan was behind the wheel that day, Bluetooth earpiece clipped in, rattling off figures to a client, barely acknowledging our presence. He didn't look back when I paused at the car door, unsure of how I'd fit. He didn't offer an alternative. The convertible was his newest fixation, a sleek, black machine with a back seat, barely big enough for grocery bags, let alone people. So when we swung by to pick up Noah, fresh off his first year of college, the only available seat was him. I told myself it was harmless. Just a few minutes. Just a tight squeeze. But the moment I settled in, I felt everything. His body heat. His breath grazing the back of my neck. The way his hands instinctively caught my waist when the car jolted over a bump. He didn't say much. Just a quiet chuckle when I made a joke. "Your dad really needs a bigger car, huh?" said. "Yeah," he replied, his voice calm and low. Not exactly built for family trips. There was something in his tone. Not suggestive, not inappropriate, but not entirely casual either. Through me. Noah had always been polite, soft-spoken. But he'd grown, taller, surer of himself. His features now carried that unmistakable confidence. His jawline had the same sharp cut as Ethan's, but his eyes carried something different. They didn't glance past me the way Ethan's had begun to. Noah saw me. Our house was perched on a bluff above the ocean, a pristine, glass-walled structure that felt more like a showroom than a home. When we returned, Ethan retreated straight into his office, still on the phone, door half shut. Noah helped carry in the bags. We didn't say much, but something between us had shifted. I couldn't sleep that night, not because of guilt, but because of awareness. Nothing had happened, but something almost had. And that was enough to make my heart race. It had been years since my body responded to someone like that. Since my skin hummed just from being near another. Scared me. The next morning, I watched from the kitchen window as Noah stood on the deck, shirtless, sipping coffee. The sunlight traced every line of muscle across his back. When he turned and caught my gaze, we held it. Just a moment too long. He didn't smile. I didn't look away. I told myself it was hormones. Or loneliness. Or boredom. Anything but real. But then I was pulling out an old silk blouse I hadn't touched in years. Dabbing on perfume I'd nearly forgotten existed. I told myself it was to feel like myself again. I knew better. Ethan didn't notice the small changes. Noah did. He asked how my day was. Complimented dinner. Remembered I liked Nina Simone. Knew I put cinnamon in my coffee. Ethan hadn't even noticed when I cut my hair. Or how I spent hours in the garden pulling weeds no one cared about. Our house had grown quiet. Distant. But with Noah there was presence. One afternoon I was on my knees in the soil, hands filthy, hair pulled back carelessly. Noah joined me without a word, crouching beside me. We worked in silence, our hands brushing now and then. It wasn't quite innocent. It wasn't quite anything else either. When our eyes met, we both knew something was there. We didn't speak it, but it hung in the air between us, electric and unresolved. Let me pause and be honest. If you're wondering whether anything happened yet, the answer is no. No lines had been crossed, technically. But emotionally, the boundaries had already blurred. If you've ever experienced the slow build of attention, gentle, quiet, and all-consuming, you know how dangerous it is, especially when you're starved for it. A week later, Ethan flew to Chicago for a weekend conference. The house was still, eerily so, without his voice bouncing from room to room. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. Noah came in from his shower, hair damp, hoodie unzipped enough to reveal a glimpse of his chest. He noticed my stillness instantly. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely there. We talked for hours. About my marriage. The ache of feeling invisible. The silence I had come to wear like skin. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions. He just listened. And when he reached for my hand, it wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was steadying. Human. Until it wasn't. He stood. Moved closer. Knelt beside me. His hand found my cheek. And I let it. Not because I was craving passion but because I was starving to be seen. When we kissed it was hesitant. Gentle. A silent question passed between two people who should have known better, but also knew exactly what they were doing. We didn't speak after. He left my room quietly. I stayed curled beneath the sheets, listening to the waves and wondering what I had just allowed. There was no firestorm. No reckless hunger. Just two people trying to fill a space that had been empty for far too long. When Ethan came home, everything resumed for him as if nothing had changed. He kissed my cheek, mumbled about delays, poured himself a drink. But I had changed. Noah kept his distance. Not cold but careful. The softness between us now strained. We never spoke of that night, but its ghost followed us through the hallways like a shadow. One morning, I stood staring at a single drinking glass in the dishwasher. Just a glass. Ordinary. But I looked at it for minutes, like it held proof of who I'd become. I didn't recognize myself. That realization cut deeper than any guilt. Eventually Ethan noticed. "You okay?" he asked one evening, for once sounding sincere. "Just tired," I lied. And that was it. He accepted the lie. Because the truth would have shattered the only thing holding our marriage upright. The illusion. A few days later, Noah was gone. No note. No message. Just an empty room. I told Ethan he'd headed back to campus early. He barely blinked. That evening I sat out on the deck, eyes fixed on the horizon, hoping for a sign. Message. Something. Never came. Maybe that's what I deserved. This story isn't meant to point fingers at Ethan, or paint what happened with Noah as romantic. It's about isolation, about being unseen, about what happens when the person who finally looks at you isn't supposed to. I'm not proud of what happened, but I won't pretend it didn't, because it reminded me that I'm still human, still flawed, still capable of needing and being needed. If this story stirred something in you, know you're not alone. These stories are complicated because life is. Would you have done what I did? Would you have walked away? Or stayed like I did and carried the weight? Subscribe to Broken Vows for more stories like this. Honest. Human.